you publish papers, you contribute, but it's not fast enough given the urgency of climate change and nature loss. I didn't feel I had the impact that I really wanted to have. It's a real rock and roll. Like, it's not an easy journey, right? It's so much harder than academia. It's harder than anything else I've done, but I love it.
Welcome to the Academic Adventures podcast. This podcast is all about people who have embraced the opportunity to combine their academic work with entrepreneurial ventures. You'll hear about the highs and lows, balancing responsibilities and grabbing opportunities, plus advice for anyone thinking about following a similar path. Hello there, I'm your host Sarah McLusky, and my academic adventurer today is Dr Genevieve Patenaude. Genevieve is an environmental scientist and entrepreneur. She is currently CEO of Earth Blox, a company that uses satellite images and big data for environmental mapping. Genevieve spent many years as an academic at the University of Edinburgh, but always had an entrepreneurial spirit and wanted to make more of an impact in the world. Indeed, Earth Blox is not Genevieve's first venture. She previously helped to found companies called Kosterka and Carbomap, but Earth Blox is the one that has really taken off. And so Genevieve is now a full-time entrepreneur as well as being a full-time parent. As you'll hear, these are roles that she takes equally seriously. Welcome along to the podcast, Genevieve. It's lovely to have you here with us today. I wonder if we could begin our conversation by hearing a little bit about what it is that you do now and your journey to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be delighted to. So I'm the CEO of Earth Blox. Earth Blox is a company that makes sustainability reporting really easy. So we actually tap into some of the world's most authoritative climate and nature data, bring this together, and make sure that our clients, which have to report against TNFD or CSRD or all sorts of different regulations and frameworks, can actually do so to all those different frameworks within one platform. So it's kind of drag and drop blocks, build your Lego, get your reporting metrics, and then that's it. You're ready to go.
Excellent. Sounds like really valuable stuff. So how did this come about?
I guess it's a long journey, isn't it, when you decide to launch a company like this? So before being the CEO of Earth Blox, I basically have an academic background. So I was associate professor at the University of Edinburgh. And in that role, basically, I use big data, Earth observation, GIS to sort of map natural resources and also assess the rate of deforestation around the globe. And that's really important because forests contribute significantly to climate change, right? So we often say forests are the lungs of the planet. Well, there's a lot of truth in this. So I was mapping and assessing, the value that forests provide to the world from really big satellites and constellations of satellites. And over my career, I realized very quickly that there's a lot of potential with this kind of data, right? And only really expert coders or PhDs in Earth observation and conservation could actually make use of this data. So later on, that's how we created Earth Blox. I guess I always wanted to have some kind of entrepreneurship in my life. In the middle of my academic career, I took a career break. I went to do an MBA. I came back. I helped set up a company called Ecometrica. So I was a founding shareholder to that company. I helped set up another company called Carbomap, of which I was director. And at a certain point in time, I felt, okay, now we have something that I can really launch myself with a small team. And so far, so good. The company's flourishing. Yeah,
so it sounds like that's been a real journey. So what was it that made you feel like you wanted to do something entrepreneurial? Do you think it's something that's always been in you?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both, right? I think it's always been a little bit in me. It's also, I enjoyed my time as an academic, but I always felt you publish papers, you contribute, but it's not fast enough given the rate of change that we're experiencing now and the urgency climate change and nature loss. It was never kind of, I didn't feel I had the impact that I really wanted to have. So, so yes, at some point I realized actually we have something that can really propel and accelerate disclosures on climate and nature and impact on nature. And I thought this was really scalable. So I decided to take the plunge.
So when you decided to set up this well, but the previous company you've said, did you do that while you were on a career break or while you
No,
were
no.
at the
So
university
these,
at the same time?
yeah. For that was kind of a
Mhm.
sidekick, if you will. So I was working as an academic, and I was helping. Carbomap was essentially a sort of consultancy arm that was associated with the university. So it wasn't really a company that was designed to really scale. It was really to sort of how can we have greater impact with the research that we're producing at the university. So that was the idea of Carbomap Ecometrica initially. And that's when I took my career break. So I was doing the MBA when the team in Ecometrica approached me, and at that point I decided to kind of be involved on the sideline, not fully kind of leaving my academic career and joining, but as a founding shareholder.
Yeah. And then this one, so those are things that you did sort of on the side, but this is the one that made you decide you wanted to really go for it. What
Yeah.
do you think it was about this project?
So it was just a combination of a lot of things. It was the right time in my life, having had children, and my children were kind of older. They're not older, at that point, maybe 5 and above. So no more kind of really intense nursery, really intense caring. I mean, you do care still a lot, but there was that. There was also the market was right at that point. I felt we're at the point where the large cloud infrastructure support the scalability. So for me to create a company where I'm leading that company, I'm the visionary of the company, right? I see five years ahead, and that's kind of bubbling in my brain all the time. So I felt that the market was ready. There was a confluence of, market forces from the regulatory perspective, market forces from the infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, parallel computing, big data, that suddenly, wow, we can really do something meaningful now. Whereas previously I felt, okay, the risk was kind of almost too high, whereas now it's the right time, the right moment to really scale something big.
Yeah, excellent. So, Earth Blox, this is something that you've built completely separately to the university. Is that right? Or is it's not really a spin out from the university, is
It's
it?
not a spin out. It's not a spin out. No, it is a startup. Although I did get support from the university. I got a Royal Society of Edinburgh Enterprise Fellowship. So that's the equivalent of the National Academy of Science here. And obviously, during that time, you're kind of bought out to look at whether this is potentially exciting IP that you can do something with it commercially. So I did have some support from the university, for which I'm super grateful. The initial project, though, was completely different from what we're doing now, right? So the amount of times we pivoted. The initial project was drone based kind of monitoring inside city. It was really interesting to see the difference from today and what we were initially. But yeah, that's that the university was involved in as much as they were supportive for me to take that time off and look at the commercialization of this IP.
Yeah, it's interesting there you said that what you've ended up doing isn't necessarily what you initially thought you would do. How did that come about? Were there moments when you kind of realized that things just weren't going to plan or the technology didn't work the way you thought it would?
There's always moment. It's always like this. It's always, this is also my advice to anyone that wants to create a company. It's learn fast, fail fast. for everything. So, I mean, we're deeply data driven and data focused. So we test, we experiment with clients, with prospects, all of our ideas. So the amount of times I've pivoted the company is, yeah, a lot. But so far so good. And I think that's the thing about having a really agile team that can really shift from one idea to another very quickly initially, so that you can find your market fit. Product market fit is really important. And essentially, for me anyway, the most valuable thing that we have in the company is the team. It's not the product. The product is an emerging property of a wonderfully functioning team that can learn really quickly, that can pivot, that is hugely resilient. So we're not attached to the product per se. I mean, we love what we do and what we've created, but essentially it's the market that tells us what we build, as opposed to us pushing a technology out. We are being told what needs to be built.
Yeah, and how have you put that team together? What's the process been like of bringing in the people to work with you?
Yeah, so the way that I focus on building the team is, and I keep reminding the team of this, we're all pieces of a huge jigsaw, right? And each one of us, there's no pieces that are bigger than another. My role is as important as Abigail's or Ben or Tim or Sam. We all have a huge amount of expertise in our area that we lead on. I lead on the vision. Abigail leads on the development of the platform. So there's that understanding that we are all playing a really important bit. I think the way that I build the team initially is with my co-founders, right? So Ian Woodhouse and Sam Fleming, is by being really truthful to ourselves. The three of us and Ben Butchards, so we're four core founders. Is where are our gaps? That requires a lot of humility. I'm really good at some things. I'm really good at seeing, planning, having the vision. I'm really bad at other things, like really bad.
It's very
and
honest.
and that's the thing, is nobody's perfect. I mean, anyone that tries to sort of pretend that they can do everything very well, they wouldn't be hired in the company, right? I think having that really deep self-awareness of what you're really good at and what you're not good at is what makes a really good team, because then you're able to be honest with others and say, this, I need help, right? And it's okay. So having that really good understanding of where are our gaps as a team, where's the commercial kind of skills that we need, and that's how we hire. We hire expertise and we hire talent to fit within the gaps that we have. And so far, and we also hire really with culture. It's culture first.
Yeah.
And that's really important, because then we don't have staff turnover. The team, I think, is really dedicated at building something that is meaningful, impactful. We have fun, we laugh, we care. It makes going to work a pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what a lovely position to be in.
Yeah.
And so, from the way that you're talking about the business, and you're talking about, building a team, and you're talking about, scaling and things like that, I can tell just from the language that you're using that you really get the business world in a way that I think perhaps some academics don't. Do you think that's something that's come from the training you've done? So like, for example, the MBA and the fellowship that you did, or do you think that's something that's you?
That's a really good question, I think. I honestly don't know. I think obviously things like MBAs are helpful in understanding certain things, processes, right? How does marketing work, and how do you build a financial forecast, and how do you do accounting and legal terms and all these things? Because becoming head of the company, the learning curve, you don't have to learn one curve, you have to learn 1,000 curves at once, right? So it's hugely challenging. I love that, by the way, because it's never boring. Um, but I think the best thing one can do to learn business is to listen, is to have really acute listening skills. Because again, coming from a deep academic background, I've not run a company before. I've been involved in some companies, perhaps more than the average academic, but I've not run a company before. But I surround myself with people who have, and I don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? So having the ability to listen to the advice that's given to me by someone that has done this before, I think is really key. Because yeah, essentially, they've done it. They've fallen. They've kind of tripped many times. I can learn from them. So that makes a really big big difference, I think, to the speed at which you can scale.
Yeah, fantastic. And are there any other things that you found helpful along your journey? Maybe even, are there sort of practical things, people, resources, materials, anything like that that's helped, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, this is essentially about the ecosystem that supported. Starting a business is, as I said, you've got thousands of learning curves to go through. You've got things you've never done. There's loads of pitfalls that you can trip over. There's just so much. So the ecosystem, there is an ecosystem there to support. Converge Challenge, Scottish Edge, Innovate UK, European Space Agency, and then there's a plethora of advisors out there that love this world, right? Because it's exciting, it's fun, essentially. So being able to sort of tap into and really embracing this, because people are there. Scotland wants to support the economy, support giving jobs that are meaningful to people. So there's and I forgot to mention Scottish Enterprise, right? So that honestly have been fundamental to our success. So this whole ecosystem, and Tech Nation, I mean, I could name them, right? We've tapped into all of this because you can't. I mean, it would be difficult to make it at a global scale without that, and that's where we play, right? We're not a local shop. We play with the largest consultancies, the largest kind of commodity production, all these things. So without that support, it would be basically impossible.
Yeah.
So go get that help.
Yeah.
Would be my advice.
Brilliant to know that that's out there. So obviously you've had lots of support there from, as you say, all these organizations, and then there's been the people, you've had your co-founders and things like that around you to help as well. But you said you've got children, you've had academic work. How have you balanced all of these different responsibilities and brought them together?
Yeah, so for me, family is top of my priority, right? Being able, I believe deeply that a sustainable world starts with sustainable childhood. Creating childhoods where children feel loved, right? It's not enough that the children know that their parents or think that their parents love them. They have to feel it, and basically, there's no quality without quantity. You have to give the time to your children. So how do I do this and run a business? Is the question. So this again comes back to the importance of the jigsaw, that everybody has their role, and the importance of delegation and being able to trust. So I trust my head of product. I'm not going to do that job. I don't know how to manage a product, right? But he can do that super well. My head of marketing, the same. I don't do marketing, right? I can contribute, but that's not my role. So I think it's really important that that to delegate and to trust. And then the second bit is also to set a culture where it's okay to have a child crash into a meeting and not push the child away and say, "Don't disturb me," right? But say, "Look, darling, I'm in a meeting. You're really important for me. but give me 5 minutes and I'll be there after, right? And to accept that it's okay to live in a life where there are communities and society and children and elderly and care, and that's what human life is about. Essentially, it's that connection, those communities, the people that are around us. So I lead a company where we have flexible working, to make sure that people that have caring responsibilities can care for the people they love. And obviously people have to be professional and work their hours and all these things, but within that, it's okay to take a break, and it's important to take a break, and it's important to be free to be with others.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a long answer, but
no, that's a completely valid one. So yeah, thank you. And in terms of balancing the business with the academic work, you've actually pretty much stepped away from the academic work now. Is
I
that
did.
right?
Yeah, I did. So technically, I'm seconded from the university. But I'm leading this company, right?
Yeah.
So I do not have any responsibilities from the university or anything like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
at least your time's only split two ways between the company and the family, rather than
Yeah.
having
I don't think
that third
I don't think it would
element.
be possible otherwise, really.
Yeah. I think that leads nicely on to a question about what success means to you now, and whether that's something that's changed over the years.
Oh, well, absolutely. Success, at the beginning was just, can we commercialize this, right?
Yeah.
Can we have a first client that is going to pay for this? And then that success landed. So success evolves, obviously, over time. You do have a vision. So, there is ultimately the ultimate success that is, tied to your vision. But there's a number of success metrics, essentially, or success areas that we're focusing on, and the first one is obviously, what we call OKRs, objective key results. Every quarter we set OKRs, we have very clear targets, and so that's kind of the most immediate success. But we also have clearly one success, which is about impact. Ultimately, I've started this with my co-founders because the planet is in a dire state, and I want my children to have to have the opportunity to live in a sustainable world, right? In a world where it's not filled with conflict. Anyway, I could go on, right? But it's we are damaging the planet at a rate that is just, shocking, and it's very sad. So how can we help change and transform internally inside big organization with data and metrics to show them the impact and how you can do this differently? Because there is a way to do this differently, right? There's lots of different levers in societies that we can change, but that's one of them. We can't address everything in this company. We're addressing one, which is, sustainable supply chain, sustainable finance, flowing into the right kinds of activities. That's what we're focusing on. So that's one thing. And we're starting to slowly kind of gather information as to how we quantify that impact, right? So that's really important. And then the last one is happiness of the team, right? I mentioned the importance of having a team that is resilient, robust, functions well. So for me, a really important element of success is having a cracking time here with the team, with people. We spend lots of hours working. Let's make sure those hours are meaningful and fun and pleasant, and that we work together to solve something that will make a difference. So everybody's really proud to work in Earth Blox. So let's maintain that. So that's a really key measure of success as well.
It sounds like you found that way to take the things that you learned while you're in academia and make an impact on something that really matters to you, whether that's the environment or the lives of the people that work for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So a final question for you, which is, if somebody listening is thinking about following a similar path, what advice would you give them?
Before you jump, really be honest with yourself why you do this, right? Because that will, I think, influence really strongly whether you should jump or not, right? So I think, I would tell them, write this down. Really kind of just, is that purpose driven? Is it just for cash? Is it because you can't find a job and you'd like another job, but you can't find either? So you're kind of creating your own. So I think having a really, really deep reflection on where is that drive coming from matters. And is that the right thing for you? Because it's a real rock and roll. Like, it's not an easy journey, right? It's so much harder than academia, frankly. It's harder than anything else I've done, but I love it. But it is harder. So so that would be the first kind of point of reflection. The second one would ultimately, be find the right team initially. Don't go at it alone. Find like really partners that you feel comfortable in good times and bad times, and that's been tested before, right? You've had those bad times where you had to sit down and discuss and say, look, that's not working, we need to assess this, and that you can really have a truly honest and respectful conversation to try to solve that issue. Because I mean, your co-founders, you kind of marry them, right? It becomes, I mean, you work with them day in, day out, there's things happening that you didn't expect. So there's a lot in there. It's a really long-term relationship, and it's different from employees. So yeah, make sure that your co-founders, you have a solid respect for them, and you're willing to sort of go through good times and bad times together.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's excellent advice to end it on, I think. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and tell us about your company and your journey to get there. It's been so interesting.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If you've been inspired by this podcast, head over to our LinkedIn page and tell us about your biggest takeaways. You'll find a link in the show notes, or just search for Academic Adventures Podcast. This podcast is a collaboration between the University of the West of Scotland, Converge and Sarah McLusky. The podcast team includes Orla Kelly, Adam Kosterka, Jen Black and me, Sarah McLusky. It's funded by the Scottish Ecosystem Fund 2023 to 2024.